Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Tuesday, March 10th. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris, and Britt Ghiroli is here. Britt is back from an incredible assignment covering the Winter Olympics. Britt, was there some part of you that wanted to just stay in Italy?
Yeah. I think, first off, good to be back, guys. Good to talk baseball with you again. But I got to say, like 2 weeks after I got home, and we're on week 3, I had what people who have covered a lot of Olympics told me is like post-Olympic depression. Like you go from this event where every day is like the best day of someone's life, and every day you're going to see somebody win a medal and just these amazing Olympic feats. And then you come home to nothing. Like there's guys throwing bullpens somewhere in Florida. I'm home in Maryland, and I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do now? You know, you're kind of sitting around like evaluating your life. You're like, man, I just saw the U.S. women's team. I just saw Megan Keller pull that shot out of nowhere. And now, what do I cover now? Sports will never be the same. They've been ruined. You go through that period, which is what everyone says is normal, and then you kind of come out the other side, which is where I am at. And you're like, okay, I'm back. I'm ready. I'm excited for baseball again. It does help that the WBC is going on and that there's actually like exciting baseball going on. But yes, a big part of me was like, wow, this is over already. It's an experience. Like if you're thinking about going as a fan or as a reporter, do it. There's nothing like it. It's Game 7 of the World Series every single day for 3 weeks. And when it's over, you're exhausted, but you're also like on such a high that it's indescribable.
I was looking ahead at the calendar, the French Alps in 2030. I imagine you're going to be enthusiastically trying to pick up that assignment again.
I am. It was a lot of fun. And people were like, why aren't you doing, the Summer Olympics? Cover baseball for a living. I swam at a really high level. I was a Division I collegiate swimmer. Summer Olympics would make a whole lot of sense. And for me, this was kind of fun because I got to learn about sports I didn't know a lot about. And like now, I would love to watch speed skating in the French Alps. I covered a lot of speed skating. The figure skating was terrific. The hockey, obviously, really good as well. I was based in Milan where all the like ice and the skating sports were. So I didn't get to see the snowboarding or Lindsey Vonn where I was. But I would love to cover Winter Olympics. They were a little less hectic from what I've heard with the summer. They're a little less event-wise, but the vibes are awesome. The sports are awesome. Watching the countries come together is awesome. Having covered a WBC, I know we'll get into this later, there are some great similarities, and there's also some important differences, I think.
Man, how you doing? I mean, I've talked to you about 48 times since I've talked to Britt last. What's new with you?
Yeah, what I miss.
No, I'm just I'm listening with with perked ears. I mean, I lived in Atlanta during the Olympics, and I remember I was actually near the place where the bomb went off. The Atlanta Olympics. Before it went off, and I remember just the Olympic Village there was wild walking through it, because I feel like with the Olympics more than any other thing, I guess when I go into like a Yankees clubhouse, I'm like, man, you guys are big. But and I haven't covered basketball where like the shortest dude is as tall as me, But the body types in the Summer Olympics were pretty amazing. Just you have the gymnasts who are like pretty small, like they are not tall people, but they are just have these amazing, legs and quads, and just like you have the volleyball players who are all gazelles. I mean, it's just like just everyone's like these archetypes almost. The swimmers are just like Adonises. I mean, it's just crazy. And then I have to joke about sex in the Olympics a lot, because, that was the joke in Atlanta that I remember going around, was that every store was out of condoms and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's a lot of young people together, that are, in the prime of their lives. And a lot of them, I bet you, don't have even long-term relationships because their training is so intense, So they're just like, oh, what my life is like. We can connect over that.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're in those dorms. I did get to tour the Olympic Village, which is closed off to the media, but there's one day they let you in. I flew in that morning, guys, and like obviously totally exhausted, but I just was not going to miss out on this opportunity. You basically dropped my luggage off, ran to the Olympic Village, and yeah, I mean, it's dorms. Everyone who stayed in a dorm in college, this is the exact same thing. And what's interesting is that U.S. hockey team wanted the full experience, and all the NHL players were also in these dorms, and you could tell which each country was because they usually had flags outside of the dorms, but they were all interconnected, and you would just like go up an elevator bank and it was like, well, there's USA and there's Canada, and they're so together. They're all in one cafeteria. It's very much like a college vibe. So they did run out of condoms again this year. It's like, guys, how many times have you done this? Order more than you think you need.
Well, there was a story about it, people also taking them because they're a great souvenir to give people back home. So aside from the usage, there was also like the wasn't stealing so much. It was more like, ooh, free souvenirs, like that. That apparently it was a big deal. I was reading about that. But yeah, welcome to Rates and Barrels, a show about the Olympics, the after-hours activities at the Olympics, and baseball. Most of the time, it's baseball. And as Britt alluded to earlier, the World Baseball Classic continues to be great. We talked a lot about it yesterday. While we were sleeping, or while many of us in the States were sleeping, the Czechia team played its final game of the tournament against Japan. And Ondřej Satoria, who famously struck out Shohei Ohtani in 2023, pitched really well again. That game was scoreless into the 8th inning. Japan eventually put a 9 spot on the board to make it a blowout at the end. But Satoria got a standing ovation after he left the game, after 4 2/3 scoreless, and another standing ovation at the end of the game because he had announced that it would be the last World Baseball Classic that he was going to participate in. So just a really cool moment, which I think is, there's like a wide range of things that happens in international competition, right? You have these great stories where someone does something unexpected. And even if it's not winning a game or placing in the tournament or medaling or advancing further than ever advanced before, you could still have these things happen. So I think that's the thing that I've previously failed to appreciate about the World Baseball Classic. Like, I've been a late adopter to this tournament. I came into it years ago with the very skeptical, I just don't want the guys I root for to get hurt. Or more specifically, I don't want the guys on my fantasy teams to get hurt, which is such a lame way to live your life. Like, truthfully, like shaming my younger self here for being so selfish about an international competition that, like, if the players want to play in it and they're having a great time, like, what's the difference? Enjoy the ride, right? Like, I think that's been clearly reflected the more and more that I've watched this tournament, even from non-contending teams and places where baseball is still growing. And Czechia is obviously one of those places.
Yeah. The stories, I think, are what make you fall in love with any international competition because you're obviously lots of the times not familiar with these athletes. So outside of, the guys who are Major League Baseball players. And I think, putting them all together and seeing the pride, seeing the uniqueness of each culture, each celebration, like that is probably one of the cooler things. And this is why people have connected to the WBC. This is why people watch the Olympics. This is why people care about curling every 4 years, right? And all these other random sports. Like, you'll just find yourself, if you're me, if I wasn't at the Olympics this year, I'll just be sitting on the couch watching stuff that, like, I would previously never have watched, but you get sucked in by the human element, by the fact that these guys are doing something they've never done, or they have this terrific adversity that they've overcome. And, that human element in sport is always going to be something that, like, binds the viewer to the athlete and that makes you, want to watch it and, like, has you, like, on the edge of your seat watching these games, like that Czechia game last night. Like, they shouldn't be able to do it, but could they do it? It's wild. I was watching, even last night, watching the Mexico US game. My husband was, like, cheering for Mexico in the beginning. And I'm like, wait, do you want Mexico to win? He's like, I don't know. I'm just rooting for baseball. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's the right answer. Like, you're just rooting for good baseball, which is, like, a really cool outlook to have. Those of you watching the video could see my obnoxious US sweatshirt. I am repurposing the things I got from the Olympics. I was telling Eno and DVR off air, I got these great Winter Olympics sweaters and all these 100% wool, which is wonderful, except it's early March and it's unseasoned. It's 80 degrees here in Maryland. So I'm wearing the only sweatshirt that I can wear in the comfort of my home. I'll have to take it off if I'm going to leave the house because I will be sweating.
It also exudes a level of patriotism that you might not actually feel in your core. I don't know. Like, it projects a loud amount of patriotism, but...
Yes, it does. You know what? I got all this stuff and I was like, well, I can't wear this at the actual events. I can't be a reporter wearing USA stuff in the press box. But I'm not covering the WBC this year. And I kind of wish I'd gotten some Italia stuff. My last name is Ghiroli. I am Italian. And then I would just rotate innings tonight, right? What would I be wearing? I don't know. Maybe one Italia thing, maybe one USA thing. I don't know. I'm a fan this year. I'm not at the WBC, but it is a lot of patriotism. It is like really 4th of July reserved patriotism right now on March 10th?
March 10th, yeah.
Yes. Go USA.
I agree with you. The stories are kind of so cool. I mean, the fact that Ondřej Satoria was, an electrician that struck out Ohtani, that's like, you get that sort of everyman feeling. And we were talking yesterday about Barreda, Manny Barreda, the pitcher for Mexico that had this, long journeyman career with 3 innings in the major leagues, but hundreds of innings in all the different leagues around the world. And he came out and kept the game close, and 2 innings with 1 strikeout and 3 walks against this lineup was good enough to keep the game exciting and close for a while. But in the end, America broke through. But I love the underdog stories, and when it comes to what's left for the underdogs in this, I think Italy-Mexico is the game that I am circling, because those are 2 of the favorite underdogs in this tournament. And on on Wednesday, I think tonight is it Italy America tonight, and they would most likely lose that game, and that would leave Italy and Mexico tied with 1 loss each. I don't actually know all the tiebreakers, but I think that looks like a kind of winner advances group play game on Wednesday. So that's going to be a fun game, and both of those teams, have just enough pitching and interesting, good lineups. So I think it'll be a really good match.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here, I do have the tiebreakers. So the first tiebreaker, if needed, is head-to-head record between the tied teams, followed by fewest runs allowed divided by outs recorded by tied teams, then fewest earned runs allowed divided by outs recorded by tied teams, and then the highest batting average in games between tied teams. If teams are tied across all of those scenarios, 4 scenarios, pool placement advancement will be decided by drawing of lots.
Jeez.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
I don't think it's going to come to that. I can't see where this might come to it, although... Yeah, where could it? I guess they've already said that Korea is advancing. So even though there's a bunch of 2-2 teams in the Tokyo pool, they've already put Korea through. So I guess the other question that's up is Cuba versus Canada.
Yes, that's going to be a big one to see who the second team through that group is going to be. So it puts a lot of emphasis really on each game for Canada, because they've only played 2 so far. And they've got Puerto Rico on Tuesday night. So you've got those Canada, Puerto Rico, Italy, US, the 2 huge games going on Tuesday night. The Israel-Netherlands game doesn't have any advancement potential, and there's also no need for either team to win to qualify for the next WBC, because neither of those teams will be last in the group. So that is a just watch for fun sort of game. Cycle on during commercials, put on the small screen, whatever your lowest priority screen is. I guess that's probably where that's going to go if you're focusing more on games that have more tournament implications. The interesting things from yesterday for me, it started with Cal Raleigh snubbing Randy Arozarena for a handshake behind the plate. Not the first time it's happened in the tournament. Eno brought this up yesterday. It happened once over the weekend too, not with Cal Raleigh in particular, but just funny when it's teammates in a professional sense ending up in this.
I'm going to soften my take. My take had been that it was all about competitiveness, but these guys know each other well, and they're going to go to battle with each other real soon. So I might give a little more credence to the other theory, which was that catchers have said that they can get thrown out of the game if they have pine tar on them.
I saw that too. There's a lot of scenarios where they can get pine tar, and I feel like it'd be kind of obvious if you rubbed it on them there. I also feel like anyone who's been in a locker room, they're messing with each other.
Yeah, man.
This happens all the time. I spent 15 years on a beat. These guy would hit a home run and nobody would congratulate him. It is that same kind of thing. I think it's part of that. It's part of Cal's probably locked in, but also we don't know what he's saying under his mask. He could be having a hard time with him. Rosarena spoke to Spanish reporters, but in our article on The Athletic, it also said they weren't sure if he was kidding or not. Because then Rosarena's like, good thing he has good parents, and they were super nice to me. Like, that kind of reads to me like some kind of like messing around thing. Like, Eno and I are in a competitive game against each other. Eno tries to shake my hand. I'm like, not now, bro. Like, like that's kind of how I see it. That's kind of how I saw it.
Yeah, so we played Family Feud in Arizona at First Pitch, Arizona, back in November, and we had a Rates and Barrels team, which had an embarrassing collapse after opening up a big lead against Pitcher List. And I walked up to the podium as the captain. I was going to buzz in, it was first one to the buzzer. I went to shake Nick Pollock's hand, and he pulled his hand away, right? Same kind of thing. We're friends. But in that moment, we're not actually friends. I was just doing the game show polite handshake. I didn't actually want to shake hands. I was like, oh, that's what they do on TV. I'll offer the handshake. Yeah. He shot it down. The host asked me about it later. He's like, what was up with that handshake thing? He's like, oh, I don't care. Like, I want to destroy Nick when we're playing Family Feud. Nick's my friend, but like when we're competing, I want to destroy him. He's like, really?
Oh, man. It all came down to one question. I can't remember what it was, but
Griffin Canning.
Griffin Canning.
It's always Griffin Canning. But Paul Skeens did Paul Skeens stuff last night, 4 scoreless, 7 Ks. I mean, like that's exactly what you want from a guy like that in a spot like that. Aaron Judge homered. Roman Anthony hit a 3-run shot after getting thrown out on an attempt to score from first base, which, as people were pointing out on Discord, was a great throw, a great relay throw. I think that was Nick Gonzalez in the relay, and Jaron Duran was in right. Perfect throw. But also, Roman Anthony didn't look like he was cruising around the base pass in that moment, not because he was not running hard, but because he was attempting to steal second, and on a couple of foul balls had to go back. So I think he lost a little bit of juice from those stolen base attempts, and that might have made the difference. Didn't end up making the difference in the end. He came back later with that 3-run shot. All that damage done against Jesus Cruz in the 3rd inning. Bryce Harper greeted him with a comebacker off the foot, too, which is just the lovely way to start your outing. You come in, Harper smokes a liner off your foot, and you like just probably can't even feel your foot, but you're like, I got to stay in this game. It's the World Baseball Classic. Unfortunately, that was all they needed in that game on Monday night. But yeah, the big games Tuesday, like we said, Canada at Puerto Rico, Italy, U.S. Italy team's plucky. I thought going into the tournament, they on paper looked a lot like Canada in terms of the quality, like absolutely good enough to advance to the knockout stage. We'll see what the pitching matchup shapes up to be. We're recording this around noon Eastern, and I don't think we have that confirmed just yet. So if we get that by the end of the show, we will be sure to pass it along. What's interesting about this tournament is that you've also got a connection to the Olympics that we didn't realize was there until Andrew Baggerly brought it to light earlier this week. And, Bryce Harper had comments that I think made a lot of waves prior to the weekend on Friday. His quote was, obviously the WBC is great, but it's not the Olympics. That's no disrespect to the WBC or anything, but everybody knows when the Olympics are on, everybody is watching. Doesn't matter what sport it is. It can be the most random sport, and it has all the fans watching it. I hope LA 28 happens. And I think you could take that a lot of different ways. I take it more at its face value. I think my interpretation of what Bryce Harper is saying is exactly what you were describing before, Britt. Most of us will watch anything during the Olympics. Like, I'll watch ski jumping, I'll watch curling, I'll watch all sorts of things that I will not take the extra effort to seek out. They're on at other times. You can watch skiing competitions. They're on apps. There's ways to get them. Like, we have the internet. We have access to these things. So I do think the idea of putting baseball on an even bigger stage is a thing you can believe without actually hating on the WBC. And I guess the thing that I'm a little bit frustrated by is that you have qualifying for the Olympics wrapped up into this tournament. We didn't even know much about it, and we're currently tracking toward a 6-team field for the Summer Olympics, which was the case for the 2020 Tokyo Games. People remember that was played in 2021. Many, I think all of the other Olympic tournaments for baseball have at least had 8 teams in them. So I do think even the difference between 6 and 8 teams is just kind of sitting wrong with me, and qualifying this far in advance is just a little bit strange as well. So I guess my hope would be that, A, you can enjoy the World Baseball Classic and Olympic baseball. There's no rule that says you have to pick one or the other. And B, that they can find a way somehow to at least get 8 teams in, because one scenario that was outlined was that both Venezuela and the Dominican Republic, or possibly at least one, might not even qualify for the Olympics. And when you think about great baseball teams in the world, it just seems weird to have a global competition where those teams wouldn't really have a clearer chance to qualify than this sneaky way into the WBC.
Yeah. Well, do I think there should be more teams? Yeah. In hockey, for example, the men's had 12 countries. The women's had 10. So that's 22. The issue in baseball is the NHL gave them almost a 3-week break. MLB's not going to do that. That part of the reason that there's 6 teams, there's a couple of reasons. One is they're sharing, they have to share some of the venues with softball. Softball has 6 teams. The other issue is, now in Milan, there were 2 hockey rinks. Women and men did share, but there were 2 hockey rinks not close to each other at all. So they were able to have a lot of games go on. Now, the men's tournament started after the women's. It was a little more truncated because of the NHL guys. However, baseball is not going to give them anything close to the amount of break that the NHL had. So part of the reason there's not a lot of teams is because the MLB guys are not going to be able to play if it's a 2-week tournament. 2.5-week tournament. It's just not going to happen. If there were 12 teams, which I think would be great, to get through those rounds, you're going to have MLB guys on almost every country's team. It's just not going to happen. And a lot of that is because MLB is not going to want to give up the time in the schedule. So I think the Olympics are getting a lot of hate. I think Bryce Harper's comments were taken wildly out of context. I think that when you look at the Olympics to the WBC, there is no comparison. The Olympics are going to grow the game in the ways the WBC is not. The 3 of us love baseball. Our timelines are all about the WBC. We are not the people the Olympics are trying to target, right? We are watching baseball no matter what. We are clouded. Our algorithms are giving us exactly what we want, which is the idea that everyone is watching the WBC. Everyone's not watching the WBC, guys. Let me hit you with some numbers, because when we were talking about this on Slack yesterday, I was kind of curious. Last year was like the most watched WBC ever. It peaked at like 7 million viewers. This was the Trout Ohtani. I was there. It was one of the coolest things I've ever covered, right? The men's gold medal game, which started at 8 a.m. on the East Coast. For that game was at 5 in the morning. The men's gold medal game. Over 20 million viewers. We're not even in the same stratosphere. And hockey right now has a 23% increase in viewership. Now, hockey runs a similar tournament to the WBC called the Four Nations. They held it last year. They had like a 5% bump when it was over. So again, not even close to the bump. People are not watching the WBC that have never watched baseball and saying, you know what, I should now sit through a 162 game season. The great thing about the Olympics is people watch the game, they get hooked. It's now July. As we know, the season is heating up. They can be like, let me start to watch these games. Oh, I kind of like this pitcher. Oh, they made this trade. It's the deadline. Oh, the playoffs are starting soon. You have an easier hook, which is what the NHL is experiencing right now, because their season has already started. They've already played games. They forfeited their All-Star game for this. People are now getting into it as the season marches toward June, where it gets really important, right? So I think that there's a lot to like about what the Olympics can do. And I understand why people are saying the WBC is better. There's more teams and there's more pride, and the Olympics, the eligibility is harder. So some of these players playing for these countries will not be able to. I get all of that. You're just not going to compete with going on Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel and having these guys all of a sudden be catapulted to actual legitimate cultural icons, right? That image of Jack Hughes with no teeth is a cultural image that we're not going to forget. You're not going to get that here. Winning the WBC is great, but it doesn't have the same value as this player who won back-to-back gold medals at the Olympics. It is just going to be different, and those viewership numbers are in a different stratosphere. Those are more closer more to like World Series viewership numbers. The WBC is great. People are paying attention. 5 million people are not watching spring training games, right? So it is great. It's just not even close.
Yeah, it puts basically the best interest of the sport at a bit of a crossroads with the best interests of each individual team. because this is where the bit that Derek was talking about earlier, but I don't want to see my best player injured, my best fantasy player. If you're the Tigers, you don't want to see Skubal injured in the WBC. So that's why there's been this whole hubbub about getting insurance on these players, and that's why traditionally you haven't seen as good pitching in the WBC, and why even now you're kind of like, where are these pitchers? Like there's so many good pitchers that are not in the WBC, and it's about injury, and it's about the teams protecting themselves. So what we really need is a strong commissioner that understands that the vision for growing the game internationally and just growing the game beyond where it stands today is going to require, some strong handing, basically. Some no, this is what is good for baseball. We need to be in the Olympics, making an impassioned plea to the owners to, putting that on the table in the CBA somehow. One thing that is also difficult about this as an issue in the CBA is that it is something that might have to be negotiated in the CBA. That's what Bryce Harper was talking about a little bit. And the problem is that, while it can be important to the players, I think it is one of those issues. Everything that's an issue on the table has to be, you sort of determine, is this our issue or is that their issue? Is it something they want or is it something we want? And if the Olympics is something that the players want and the owners don't care about, they will quickly put that aside because they won't want it as much as more money or higher minimum or whatever it is, it just won't be that important. If it's like a goodwill measure where both of them want it a little bit, that's the best case scenario for the Olympics. If the owners say, yeah, okay, that could grow the game for us, and the players say, yeah, we think that looks cool, then maybe that's something that could be easily settled and they just bake it into the schedule. But baking it into the schedule is also something that may not be something that owners want, because how do you get 2 extra weeks in the schedule? Do you have to cut something?
Spring training. You cut spring training.
Yeah, cut spring training down by a week. Start the season a little earlier. Make your schedule in a way where indoor teams and warm weather teams are home when the weather's not as good. As a one-off thing, that's a couple of years away.
So are you saying bang the All-Star game?
The NHL banged it. I mean, yeah. Like the NHL, Gary Bettman has gone on record saying they banged the All-Star game. They probably took a bath, but it was worth it because, like I just said, the 23% increase in viewership. You have to play the long game.
And nobody's watching the All-Star game and watching more baseball afterwards. I'm sorry. It's just not.
Right. It's not an on-ramp. It's not an on-ramp to becoming a big fan. At least if it is, it's not going to bring in as many people as a higher level competition where everybody participating
where
actually
people care
wants to win badly.
Yeah.
And I do think, based on the reporting I've seen the comments from Rob Manfred, seeing the comments from players, it does seem like there is a similar level of interest where they both see something they want, where there's not many things you're going to find the PA and the league seeming like they agree on right now, but this seems like rising tide lifts all boats. We get more eyes on the sport, we bring in more money, this could be a good thing for everybody. So it looks more like it's trending in the right direction than you'd expect given the broader state of where the CBA seems to be headed.
I don't know if you reported on this, but there's some money for the players involved. How did that work at the Olympics? How does money at the Olympics work?
They get money for medals. The U.S. government pays them. Well, also the amount of free stuff they get, the sponsorship stuff they get. You can't tell me that the Hughes brothers and Megyn Keller are not going to now add sponsors. And baseball has historically been a sport where outside of Shohei Ohtani, they're not making any money on sponsors, right? So if you want these global stars, if you want people to be like, there's Aaron Judge, he had he was the captain of the gold medal team, and you want these guys to transcend the sports, the Olympics is the avenue. And what you guys may feel differently about, but I think you're going to see a higher quality of play in July than you are for a tournament in March. Skubal mentioned this yesterday, Tarek Skubal, who decided after talking to the Tigers and Scott Boras that he's not going to make another start. He said, and I'm certain he got this from either Scott Boras or the Tigers, who did the research, most pitchers' injuries happen in March or after the All-Star break when they've had a long layoff. The scariest thing for teams about the WBC is having pitchers go full throttle, even if it's only 4 or 5 innings in these high-pressure environments in March. If we're talking about that in July, it is not really that much different than Tarek Skubal throwing a 9-inning complete game because he's got it going on one day. There might be some limitations, but they're not going to be 40, 50 pitches. There's not going to be teams that are saying like they are to Mark DeRosa now, my guy has to start a clean inning. These relievers are going to be in midseason form. These pitchers are going to be in midseason form. And if you keep pitching, the stats show stopping and starting is what hurts. Ramping up too quickly is how injuries happen. If this tournament is going to happen in July, I think you're going to see a better quality, and you're going to see, like what Derek was talking about, some of those pitchers that aren't in it that are now in it because they're like, all right, it's July. I can go 100 pitches. I'm in midseason form. We took a week off the schedule. I can handle the workload. I'm good here, right? Like, it's better for me to pitch.
There's a weird element in spring, that there are all these rules put upon Mark DeRosa and all the other managers where they're saying, yeah, like you said, my guy needs a clean inning. There was I was talking to Ken Rosenthal about one of the exhibition games for Team USA, and it was some sort of laugher. It was the one before the Rockies one, and it was a laugher. The Team USA was up by so many runs, and it was the end of the ninth, and they announced over the PA that they were going to pitch another inning because Gabe Spire hadn't pitched yet, and he needed an inning. So I think that explains some of the weird lineups that people will see with Bobby Witt sitting sometimes, and some of the choices that have been made about where DeRosa's, like, some of his hands are tied because it's spring training for them, and the agreement is between the teams and Mark DeRosa and Team USA that, my guy will get this many innings, he'll pitch this much. That's part of why Skubal had to leave too, is like, that was the allotted amount of time that the Tigers gave him. Like, you can pitch once for them, this many pitches around this time. And so that, I think some of those kid gloves would come off in a July tournament because, there would just be, they might say something like, use me if you need, like, there might be some stuff, but I just don't think it'd be the same as March, where March is like everyone's trying to follow a certain way. And the reason I asked about money is I don't have like multiple sources on this. The beginning of this, I'm sure is right. So in the past, World Baseball Classic, like they got $300,000 as a team to be in the World Baseball Classic. That was that sort of base level. But because things have gotten more exciting and they got more TV money and they're watching, people are watching, this year the bonuses started at $750,000. So each team gets $750,000 for being in. So that's kind of cool because, I think you could probably say something like $20,000 a player, and the coach gets like $100,000 or something, or the organization takes some sort of cut so that they can fund sending them to other tournaments and fund even practice or whatever it is, facilities, that sort of stuff. So maybe they get 10 or 15,000, the coach gets 50,000, and the organization gets 100,000. But that's a decent amount of money for somebody like, the Czech Republic, to like maybe keep this team going and keep people interested in coming, the next Satoria to come, like, hey, at least you could make 10, 15, 20,000, if we advance, then you get $1 million for advancing. But there's this part I can't confirm, but is kind of fun. So the Dominican Republic was the only team that ever went all the way through undefeated. And so apparently there's a prize for doing that specifically. And I'm looking at marca.com, and it's saying for the team that manages to finish the tournament undefeated, the prize will be $7.5 million. And, if they just win without an unbeaten streak, the champion gets a bonus of $2.5 million. Oh, and here I'm reading 50% to the federation, 50% to the players. So that's how it goes. But
from MLB, like, who's paying that out?
Yeah, I think it must be from TV money. It must be the distributed. It says it's distributed. I don't know. It's distributed by the entire World Baseball Classic. So I'm assuming it's a share of the TV money.
The Olympics, they are not getting that kind of money now. They just aren't. But that's because of the way the U.S. is. Certain countries do pay their athletes. The U.S. doesn't. They pay medals. Norway, who won the Winter Olympics, does not pay their athletes anything, even when they win medals. But the U.S. also doesn't fund
it's the part at the end where they're talking about 50% to the federation, 50% to the players. Olympics is more like 100% to the federation, and then they can do with it what they want.
No, the Olympics depends on the country. the Olympics depends on the country. The NBC is not paying these countries. NBC is taking all of this TV money. Jordan Stoltz, for example, wins gold medal. He won 2 gold medals and a silver for the U.S. He got paid per gold medal from the U.S. They pay a certain amount for gold, a certain amount for silver, but they're not getting paid.
But the U.S. is also funded by like sponsors. It's not even funded by the government.
Correct. They're not funded by the government, but certain countries it is government funded. So yes, it is very dependent on the country how it works. The U.S. does not does not pay athletes to train, and certain countries do. Certain athletes you can actually be a professional speed skater, right? In the Netherlands, it's like football there. But here in the U.S., that's why we always hear about Olympians that are like, oh, they're a barista on the side, or oh, they they do DoorDash. That's why you always hear those stories, because these people are not making any money. They're only making whatever they're making through sponsors.
Or that one speed skater who stole money from her roommate.
Dude, there was so much scandal. I know, the drama. Incredible. The amount of drama. Or the guy who cheated on the girlfriend. Like the amount of drama.
My God,
if you like drama, this Winter Olympics was for you. Like,
we need a little bit more of that in the WC, but I guess we won't get that much of that part. But when it comes to that kind of money, for a lot of the U.S. players, it won't be that big a deal. But like in I think the starters have been announced. In the Italy USA game, it's Nolan McLean against Michael Lorenzen, according to MLB.com. Lorenzen's on a free agent deal. McLean's still on his minimum, so I mean, if he makes an extra 100,000 off this tournament, dude, he'll notice. And then in Canada, Puerto Rico, it's actually even more in the forefront, where it's Jordan Balazovic. So some people listening might remember Jordan Balazovic as a pitcher that was coming up through the Twins organization. At this point, he is a free agent. He has been moving to relieving. He's a 27-year-old free agent, probably looking for a minor league deal. He is not only playing for that 50,000, but also, or whatever it is, but also for attention. Like this is his like throw day in front of the scouts, where he's trying to convince a team that he can be a part of their bullpen. And on the other side is Jose De Leon, who is, his career has taken him to a similar standing point. So like, there's a lot on the line in that Canada-Puerto Rico game that's just beyond even the standings in the WBC at the current moment. But I just love that like, we get to see these players. And I kind of, there's a little bit of, why are there so many Americans playing for other teams? And I don't know. I like that too. Like, I love that the Italy team, so many of them are honoring their grandmother, their grandfather, their mother, their father, their heritage. And that happens in the Olympics too, man. I know that people made a big deal about that one skier who, who skied for China, but there's a couple things going on.
She's she's a global star. It's just amazing. Like our brains are so wired into like the things that we're into. Like Eileen Gu is a huge deal.
I know. I'm sorry.
And she makes so much more money in China than she would in the U.S., which is really, I think, what it's about.
So that's part of it, and then the other part of it is like that's not true for her, but that is true for other people. Where maybe there are like if you're a figure skater and the 1 and 2 spots are taken by like these, maybe you just you go for somewhere else. So like a lot of the Italian team, like Pasquantino's not going to start for Team USA, so he's going to start for Team Italy, and he gets to take part in this. He gets to honor his heritage. So, I think it's cool that there's Team Israel's recruiting out of the US, out of MLB, Team Italy. I think it's totally cool, and I think that it actually follows the Olympic sort of guidelines, and it doesn't exactly follow the Olympic guidelines. There's a little bit more fudging in WBC, I think, but
yes, you have to be a resident in the WBC of the country you're competing in. You don't in the WBC. It's like if your grandparents like I could compete for Team Italy.
Right. That's the difference. There. You have to be a resident. Okay, because we were trying to figure out how Jazz ended up on
I'm sorry, you need citizenship. That was the big deal.
For
the Olympics. Yes, that was the big deal. You need citizenship. So baseball players who want to play for their countries are going to have to look into. That's why it might be a little different who plays for who. The money thing with the WBC is interesting too, because also I think they needed that to get people in. Keep in mind, the Olympics have been going on since the beginning of time, it feels like the back in the day with the Greeks. So it's like they don't need that. But when MLB created this tournament, it was like, how do we get buy-in? We get buy-in with this pot, right? And it's gotten bigger and bigger. But like, remember, I mean, 9 years ago, people weren't that into it. It's gotten so much bigger every year.
Ooh, I wonder if that follows the money a little bit. But
Well,
also that
nah.
Trout Ohtani moment, I think,
Yes,
brought a lot
yes.
of people in.
I think there was just a realization watching teams that were in it right away from the beginning and how much they cared about it. Like, oh, hey, wait, we're missing out on something here. Competitive.
And a little bit of like pride where it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, Japan has just won the first 2 WBCs. Like, come on, America. Like, let's get in this, dude. We'll go win
Yes.
this, you know?
Yes. And I do think too that like, I guess when you look at this whole like, I don't know, should these guys play? Should they not play? They need to figure out the insurance, because I was like peppering the NHL guys in Milan with all these questions because so much of their situation mirrors MLB. Like Mike Russo, shout out. Like I was just bothering him nonstop, and nobody had these problems of insurance. I didn't see any uproar over Sidney Crosby getting hurt by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Did you guys see any uproar? No, because they all got insured. He couldn't play for Canada. He's out for a little while. That's like the price of admission. I don't want to see a case where 9 players from Puerto Rico can't play in the Olympics. They got to figure out like a better insurer or like some, I don't know, but I don't want to see this because it's going to ruin the Olympic experience, I think. Like everybody should be, if they're insuring these hockey guys, they should be able to insure these baseball guys.
I mean, I do think the amount of guaranteed money on some of these deals in Major League Baseball is dwarfing what even like professional leagues in other parts of the world are dealing with. Evan Drellick had a piece and included a note that Japan has never had to hold a player back for insurance issues from the WBC. Now, I realize the contracts are completely different, but even the NHL money, there's big money in the NHL. There aren't $300 million players in the NHL. So that's sort of like part of this too. It's like a very unique, super long-term deal, huge amount of money, got to cover multiple years of lost salaries, which ends up being a massive policy. You're right. All of this comes back to incentives at the end of the day. What are the incentives to participate? Are they greater than the incentives of not participating? Tarek Skubal had a ridiculously difficult decision. He's decided to go back to Tigers camp. It was very clear reading the stories about this. He's been wrestling with it since he pitched against Great Britain. He wanted to strongly consider coming back for one more outing. And we could argue about this to the end of time because I don't think there's a clear answer on this. There's got to be an increased likelihood of suffering an injury in WBC games versus spring training games because the intensity is different. Like you're more likely to get hurt in a game you care about than a game you don't. Even if in a game you don't care about, you're still using the same mechanics, still throwing the ball about as hard as you can, working on different things. Like there's risk in the spring training game too. It's not as though you're without risk in spring training, especially at the beginning. And Skubal talked about injuries being concentrated in the early part of the season. I wonder how much that's going to change the players' mindset about participating in a midsummer tournament, versus how much it's going to change teams' incentives to let guys play in the middle of your season. If you have a pitcher that's having a great year, maybe even your medical team's like, hey, he's a little fatigued, he's pitching well, he's a little tired. Do you want that guy to go out and make a couple of starts in an international competition? Or do you look at that little window of rest and say, actually, a little break here might be ideal. A little bit of rest, side sessions, nothing intense, might actually be the thing that keeps this guy fresh for the rest of the season, right? So I do think you're still going to have some of these battles. You're still going to have insurance. You're still going to have guys that are on the fence. And if you're Skubal, if you're 3 months away from free agency instead of a full year away, if you're closer to that point and you're still healthy, I wonder how much that changes your thinking, right? His decision might be as close to a one-of-one decision as we've seen so far. I mean, a guy on the precipice of a major deal participating and having to go all of this year healthy to get to the end of that. That's a really unusual set of circumstances. But moving that timeline does just shift around a few things that people care about, even though I agree with what you said earlier, Britt. Having pitchers fully stretched out in the middle of their season, they're going to be able to pitch longer in games. I also wonder if that makes the field more competitive or a little less competitive for some teams because they don't have aces available. Like what we've seen in the WBC, when the pitching depth runs out, that's when the levee starts to break. A lot of teams have a few good pitchers, which is great. But depth is a big difference maker right now between the teams that are advancing and the teams that are not getting out of pool play. And I just wonder how pitchers being available for larger roles, how that changes the quality of the games for the Olympic format.
I think one of the big sticking points, we were talking a little bit about how this might show up in the CBA and how, maybe they can find some common ground. I think insurance is the big sticking point. Who pays it? I think, if you want to think about it through, you'd be like, okay, who should pay the insurance? And I think the answer might actually be the WBC Federation, because they're the one that would benefit from the play.
What about for the Olympics, though?
Yeah, because there's not going to be, the Olympic Federation is not going to pay for it.
I mean, historically, yeah. If you read back about baseball's history in the Olympics, J.J. Cooper had a good breakdown of this. Historically, the Olympics haven't exactly gone out of their way to include baseball. They've gone the other direction. They've kind of pushed it away at various points with different people in charge, different eras. This has happened. So that's sort of the thing that's like, okay, like if Major League Baseball's into it and the players are into it, is the IOC as into it as they are? Like that's the other part of this that I think we really need like a full buy-in from for it to hit the level that we would hope it could hit.
Well, on the flip side, the IOC hasn't been that into it because MLB hasn't been into it, and they haven't been willing to give their players the breaks. It's really difficult
because
to
the
include
IOC is like,
a league.
don't send us your minor leaguers. It's not that exciting.
Yeah, and it's really difficult to include a league that's like, oh, can we squeeze this in over the 4-day All-Star break? Like, again, the NHL gave their players a really long break. If you're in, you're in. If you're not, you're not. If Rob Manfred was to say, we're going to give these guys 3 weeks off, you watch how the IOC would jump. You watch how more teams would be added. You watch how all of a sudden NBC would be like, this is our prime time. This is swimming, gymnastics, and baseball. This is it. So it's both people to blame.
Basketball's lucky because it's a winter sport that gets included in the Summer Olympics.
Right, it gets included in its off season, its professional off season for men's basketball.
Yes.
So
that's why they haven't had this problem.
Yeah,
yes. And baseball's unique, right? Like, there's no pitching in hockey. Like, nothing is as fragile.
Right. There's that one injury
pitchers.
that could cost. Like, I think the Scuba insurance is probably unique too, right? It's not insurance on an existing big contract. It's like insurance on a contract that doesn't exist yet.
It reminds me of the first instance I can remember of this was Willis McGahee getting hurt in the Fiesta Bowl, I think it was, but about the time we were all in high school. He was going to be a first-round pick, running back out of Miami, and he blew out his knee in the last game of the season. And there was definitely at the time, it was like, play or not play. And I think if I remember correctly, he actually had a big insurance policy to protect him against that possibility. But yeah, if it's a guaranteed deal already, the years that have to be covered are pretty significant. So it ends up being a massive policy. In any case, we've talked a lot about insurance policies on the show today. I didn't expect that up front. Some other stuff that's going on. We don't have a lot of time to break it down, so we'll probably nudge this over for a deeper dive on Wednesday. But Jesus Luzardo got a new deal from the Phillies, a 5-year, $135 million extension. So we'll break that down a bit on the Wednesday show. Looks like Corbin Carroll is going to play in some spring games this week, so he appears to be ahead of schedule after having the hamate surgery.
Once Ryan Waldschmidt went down, I feel like we kind of knew that Corbin Carroll was coming back.
Yeah, probably a pretty good sign there. I mean, all indications have been he has been doing well in his recovery. And then, to put a bow on today's episode, Hunter Greene is going to have the aforementioned bone chips in his elbow removed and is unlikely to pitch until July. So that is brutal.
You know what's weird about that? We were talking about what the right number of innings was to put next to his name. And I said it should be like 70 or 90. And this is when he was in the MRI stage, because we're talking about like how to think probabilistically about these injuries, and he's in the MRI stage, so you wouldn't give him a lot of innings, but you wouldn't give him 0 because you don't know what the outcome of the MRI is. You don't know what the outcome of the situation is. And so I said, I think the number I'm putting down next to him was like 70 or 75. And that actually now seems like a great number for what he's going to do this year.
Yeah, it does. You guys will get into Luzardo Wednesday. My one quick thought when I saw that, beyond what it means for the Phillies' reputation right away and whatnot, is are we going to see a lot more of that this year with a pending work stoppage? Are we going to see guys who are like, you know what? I'm just going to sign an extension and not really worry about what else is happening. Are we going to see that a little bit more?
I mean, if they're worried that a cap is coming or whatever, they'd rather lock in longer years if they think that the number is going to come down. But on the other side, the teams are wondering, hey, maybe the cap is going to, I don't even know how a cap is going to work. Yeah. Yeah. But CBAs are 3 years long, so how long is it going to take you to get the cap in there?
It would have to, there'd have to be a level of grandfathering in. They couldn't just say like, oh, the Dodgers cut half your payroll. They just couldn't do that. They can't just like take money away from Juan Soto. Like, you just can't do that.
They'd have to sign like a 5-year CBA deal just to even be able to like have it by the time the next CBA comes around.
I know. I just wonder if we're going to see more extensions for guys who are like, you know what, I don't really want to deal with any of this. I'm just going to sign my fair. If I think it's fair and they think it's fair, I'm not going to deal with any of this. I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody about that yet. That was just kind of like something I thought off the cuff.
Just saying this or what we just said, it makes me think that the new CBA will deal with existing measures, won't be anything super new, and will just like give more teeth on both sides. Maybe like they'll argue about, oh yeah, like the cap is a little bit harder at the top. The luxury tax penalties are bigger, and there has to be some penalties on teams that don't, spend all their money on the bottom. It's like a soft bottom and a soft top. I think
it's
that'll be
very much you're talking about a compromise. Yes, you're very solutions oriented instead of just digging in and trying to get the things you're never going to get. You're working toward the middle as quickly as those two sides hopefully will actually eventually work towards the middle, but they're not going to work that quickly. It doesn't go that way. It's just not how things tend to go. We need to go on our way out the door. Reminder, you can join our Discord. Link for that is in the show description. If you've got a question for a future episode, drop that in the mailbag channel. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.